Hello, everybody, and welcome to this podcast. I'm Lode van Aken, moderator of the day and Hyperautomation expert. I'm joined today with three other experts from AE. I'll let them introduce themselves quickly. On my right-hand side, we have Gert-Jan van Look.
Yes, nice to meet you, Gert-Jan. So at AE, I'm an AI architect, and I will pass the ball to Thibaut.
Thank you. I'm Thibaut Kronenborgs, data architect at AE, and I'll pass last person, Lisbeth.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Lisbeth de Geest, and I'm a transformation consultant at AE.
Great. Well, thanks for joining for today. We'll be talking about hyperautomation. And before we kick things off, I would like to start with something we want to have our audience imagine themselves. So imagine the customer request comes in and it's instantly understood, routed, enriched with the right data. At the same time, it's either automatically resolved that request or handed to the right person with the full context, allowing them to have an audit trail, clear ownership over the request, while not having to change any approvals. They can just don't have to copy and paste between tools or go into different tools. The decision happens where the work really happens, so they don't have to actually find the work themselves. And every improvement we make in that customer request ecosystem actually gets reused across the next workflow. This is something that we at AE refer to as hyperautomation. And today, during this podcast, we'll unpack how organizations build this kind of automation ecosystem, not as a one-off project, but really as an operational capability, impacting business, people, and technology. And to start the discussion, I'd like to actually start with a question for Gert-Jan. In that context of hyperautomation, what does AI, one of the new hypes nowadays, do that generally moves the needle? What makes it the most valuable?
Yeah, cool. Good question. I think in this definition of this imagination of what hyperautomation is, I think it can have an impact on maybe three different layers, I would say, in what we do in organizations. And I think we can start with the personal one. I think that we should really try and start implementing AI there where we don't really like those parts of our jobs, kind of the whole idea of automating out the boring stuff type of things. I think it helps really in creating the enthusiasm also with people, like what is the value creation that we do. That's one part. I think if we look at the business as usual, the things that we already do, the processes that we have in place at this point in time, and we can think in the enhancement of, for example, the processes that need more speed. AI can help us in making decisions faster, automating those processes that we see added value in the acceleration of those processes. But on the other hand, it's not always only about speed. I think it's also very useful when we need some decisions or processes where we need really those quality enhancements. We can have some quality levers or levers that we can input based on AI, for example. So I think there's also a very nice add-on.
So what you mean is making the decisions to be more effective then?
Well, I think that sometimes you want some input on decisions that you make from a strategic point of view, tactical, operational point of view, that are maybe a bit more gated. For example, do you want to send an email, whatever, and those emails that are sent, are they in the right language, for example, etc.? That can be a step in the process. You can automate the step itself by AI, orchestrate the step. But maybe you also want, when the human in the loop does send the mail, that you want to have some quality gates, what's going out, for example. I think just one example of a different value add that AI could bring. And then the last part maybe of this answer could be that we not only look at the personal level, the as-is business level, but maybe also the new opportunities that you can create given AI. Are there new business models that you can generate nowadays that weren't possible before with this new tool and technology in place? Does it make sense a bit?
I totally agree with you. Maybe I would like to add one thing, because what we see in practice is that works flow smoothly end to end. The people that perform that work can stop compensating for broken processes and fragmented systems. And that just creates much needed space for them. Because if you think what becomes possible, then it's not just about efficiency. you create space for them to focus on workflow improvements or on complex judgments or on creating real valuable customer interaction. It's the more digital, more human thing, instead of just coordinating the whole day through or firefighting modus. And I think that's really, really valuable.
Yeah. So it's not only the boring stuff, but also the painful stuff.
Yeah,
Process,
indeed,
right?
indeed. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And so from that perspective, humans are of course important because they still play a very, very crucial role. At the same time, we cannot ignore technology, I think, and especially data is one of the cornerstones of typically having good hyperautomation practices in place. So from that perspective, Thibaut, what needs to be true in data and integration for experiences to really be able to shine and work end to end?
Yeah. But it all sounds good, but maybe on the technology side. And when you look at the human and the business side, it all sounds good. AI, great, fantastic. It can automate lots of stuff. It can automate the boring stuff and the painful stuff. But for that to happen, in my view, you need a good foundation. We're coming back to it many times, but data foundations are really important. I'm going to steal like a quote from Microsoft, which is saying AI is only as good as the data that's underneath.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that sums it up. Your data foundations, your data needs to be good. It needs to be matchable. It needs to be usable. It has to have the right security gates, so that data cannot leak. And your systems, everything needs to be ready to communicate with each other, to not have that copy paste between those different applications. So there are good foundations that need to be present.
The interesting thing is that that's something that we see day to day or in our day-to-day jobs when we're implementing those AI solutions. It's, you start with some simple processes that you want to automate, maybe put some AI in decision levers, etc., or taking really actions themselves. But now that you're into the automating or hyper-automating track, you do see that you time to time see some capabilities that you need and need to improve it. For example, we're creating mails or drafting mails, doing classifications or whatever. And now we see like, okay, we need more of the document information to make these classifications better, or drafting these mails better, making more orchestrated decisions agentic wise. And that is now the point in different projects that I'm working on, where we have to make this quality in the foundations and the data better for the AI solutions to become better. There's really a tipping point where you really have to look at those things. So I completely agree.
Yeah. And maybe I would like to add one thing, but you're talking about the data fundamentals, but I also think that it's really important to take a look at your processes that you're going to hyper automate, because you can put the old process, in like kind of a new AI jacket. But I think it's really valuable before you do that you also take a critical look at the process itself. And redesign it.
Indeed. That's quite difficult for people to do these days, because everyone knows like, okay, do we just have to put AI inside of a flow that we already know and just put it in or input it? But then do that step back, or take that step back, or that zoom out of, okay, what we're doing this day and age, is it still relevant? It's quite a difficult question to answer as well. But it's a very relevant one indeed.
Yeah, and you really should look at it. It's an opportunity. You now have the opportunity to fix the basics. I would like to say fix the data fundamentals, but also the processes. So
Of course, the downside there is that everybody wants value immediately. And that's where it's always so you need to still take baby steps towards towards a solution that actually delivers value from the get-go.
Yeah, because from your point of view as well, a question from my side is, you said indeed defining those processes and maybe reinventing them. But what I often see is when we start automating some sort of processes, that often the process itself isn't really defined yet or really aligned upon in the organization itself, and that capability of those process mappings, etc., is something that really enables to AI if I think about redesigning, etc. Is this something for you as well, from your experience, etc., a necessity to do these kind of steps and redesigning, or could you also start from a blank page? Or
well, I think it's a necessity because there's also some real value over there. But we don't want to stop or block the innovation speed. You have to take action nowadays. But when you start with hyperautomation, I think that a good first case can be a thing where there's already clear ownership, where there's a straightforward process, and that you can already improve quickly, that you have the first successes. So I think of it like some parallel tracks.
Yeah.
You can already start with some, but in the meantime, you can also fix the data fundamentals or the processes for some bigger parts.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Finding that balance between going fast, going and not going fast, doing the right things and doing the things fast is really essential. When you start that AI project, so really good point. Yeah.
But the goal to actually have foundations which you can build upon and be able to then have it scale throughout the organization. Is that the way we look at it in essence?
Well, I think it depends also a bit of the history of a company itself, I think, and culture. Some companies really like to think upfront quite a bit. And then when they thought it through, they act upon it. Some are more pragmatic in a way, and they try to or like to experiment and then build capabilities along the way. I think there is value and truth to both of them. It depends on what suits you. I think I do, maybe it's more a personal thing. I do like the second approach sometimes a bit more because you can really build capabilities and function of the things that you want to try to enable in the first place. And you really learn which capabilities you need in which format to try to achieve your goals. But again, it's one take.
But that's then a more bottom-up approach.
Kinda, yeah, indeed.
Yeah, but I don't think that it's either this way or either that way.
Not
I
per
see
se.
it like
Yeah,
you have your organization. It's like a big ship or something, and you have to take a turn to
transform.
to transform your organization into the right direction. But next to it, you need some real speedboats to get that innovation running, to get that first success in the organization and make it visible. So I think you have to do it both.
Okay, indeed. It's not a good or wrong thing, I think, but maybe the weight on the one or the other is maybe a bit more depending on the process or in the steps in the phase.
And so I think I started off with a bit of an example. Let's not go too deep into an example. I think throughout the conversation here, some examples will pop up as we go. But in essence, what it kind of boils down to is like organizations want faster service, better decisions, smoother operation. And hyperautomation is all about how you make that repeatable in a scalable manner. So you could try to actually close the gap a little bit between ambition and operational reality. And that's by connecting a lot of different things. We spoke about people, we spoke about data, governance, I guess architecture. Thibaut is going to be equally important as well. I see you nodding, so
yes.
And those things are really important to actually impact, actually value to actually become impactful over time. But starting from that perspective, how do we make sure that value ROI is not necessarily an afterthought? Does anybody want to chime in on that one?
I think depends again if you're more, I'm phrasing it this way, the top-down, bottom-up thing that you said. I think some kind of direction, whether it's fully clear or not, you need something to work towards. The idea of that the strategy is a capability, it will be ever-changing, and it's a good thing, for example, but you need to have kind of an objective, your first objective, and know how you measure success from my point of view. And I think if you're automating steps in a process or a whole workflow, etc., you need those kind of KPIs monitored to also kind of have this in a way that you can communicate to different stakeholders in the company. I can imagine often these kind of projects or transformations down the line, they can require some investments, and you really want to know, like, okay, is it really worthwhile what I'm doing here? And so having reporting on those efficiency gains, but also on the adoption rates, on the KPIs, for example, maybe the money saved or money gained or whatever that you wanna put in a KPI, that you can clearly track this and also see, are there really value drops? Were the ideas of our initial business case relevant, worthwhile? Was it accurate enough? Yes or no? And this can indeed, I think, help leadership to make decisions, maybe making other decisions or making some other steps down the line, but also communicating to the people using the AI for those objectives, to maybe see, like, hey, this is the impact I'm creating in the company as well. So it adds up to the change journey, I guess.
And so maybe, Lisbeth, from that perspective, when you treat hyperautomation as a concept where value is not an afterthought but something immediately there, and you kind of treat it a little bit as an operating principle or design principle, what would you advise organizations or leaders to do differently in an organization?
Well, three things need to be explicit very early on, I think. Who owns the decisions? Where do you have exceptions and interventions? Where do they happen? And in which forums do you actually decide, and not just discuss? Because if that's unclear, the governance around it becomes reactive and defensive. And if it's clear, governance can enable speed, because people know when to act and when to escalate. But if you don't put any governance around it, if you don't make it clear how each of those projects will help you realizing your business strategy, you get what I like to call chaos.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't want to do organized chaos, or
no?
Okay. could be a thing. Organized chaos.
Isn't what we call lean mean governance?
Yeah.
Lean governance. Yes,
yeah,
for
but
sure.
of course you have to put in pragmatic governance and lean governance that enables innovation instead of blocking it. But
Okay.
yeah.
And from the data perspective, Thibaut, what do you see organizations that are successful in applying hyperautomation? What do you see as maybe the lean pragmatic things that need to be there versus organizations that really want to quickly do some sort of AI use case, get it into production, but then the whole thing stays local and they're not capable of scaling it throughout the organization? Which part of the data foundation from an architecture perspective or general data on its own need to be there?
I think companies really want to start also pragmatic. We talked about it, the pragmatic versus the good foundation. Companies always start pragmatic, and then they take a use case, maybe with a high ROI or some sort of ROI, and then they want to implement it. They do an MVP. Oh, this works. This is great. But sometimes there are a lot of manual steps still in there, some human in the loop. And I think, the data is gathered from anywhere, and it's only a subset of the data, and it's only they work on a subset of data that they've gathered somewhere, that they know that works, that they know that don't have flaws. But in order to scale, you really need to have that data and those systems synced. For example, you have a customer somewhere in different systems. A question comes in for that customer, like you had in your intro. The question comes in somewhere, and it needs to get all information all over the systems. It needs to find that information. This is this customer. He has purchased that and that and that. So what we see in some companies is that matching is still not there. The customer is not found in this or this system, or it is present in multiple systems, but it's not. It cannot be linked to each other. The orders cannot be linked to the customer in another system. So really, those foundations and consolidation of that data really needs to be there in order to make that system work and scale and go into production. On the other hand, you also have your systems that need to be able to communicate with each other. You don't want that automation. You don't want to have a click of a button somewhere. The question comes in and it needs to communicate with those systems. So,
and would you use something like data products as a concept to help organizations become more mature, to then have that to actually help support those data foundations to be built up from a product mind perspective more, or would you go with a different approach?
No, ideally the data product approach is the way to go, where you have clear ownership of your data. The data quality should be monitored in that case, so the data quality should be up to speed as well. And I would take that approach if possible, of course.
Okay. Gert-Jan, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think you started by kind of mentioning that it depends on the complexity of the use case. I think that's those foundations and which foundations you need will really rely upon that complexity, I guess, because you gave a good example on that. You need to know which customer is which customer, depending on which source systems, etc. It's a very common issue. And some use cases that only need one source system, for example, you need other foundations, for example, not per se a data platform or whatever, but maybe automate something. For example, you have one source system where you want an AI agent to put an order, and you only need whatever interface, MCP, HTTP, you choose your thing. You only have to interact with that service. It can be a simpler foundation than whether you want to create a classical machine learning, for example, a model. So it really depends on which tool you're using and what kind of complexity the architecture requires you to put in place to make also that MVP even production worthy, given the use case that you started with. So I don't know whether I'm adding clarity to this concept, but I think it's quite an important one because it helps you choose which capabilities you build now and which ones later on.
Okay, I think it's a good talk track from that perspective. Often, like, how do we start? Like, you're an organization, you want to start doing hyperautomation. Maybe Lisbeth, how do you pick the first value stream? What makes it a good candidate?
Yeah, I think copy pasting data between systems, that's probably the most common form of non-value adding work. It's invisible, repetitive, it introduces risk without improving outcomes. But from a change perspective, you want something concrete enough that teams experience as this actually helps me. And not something that helps them within like a year or so, but helps them within weeks. And they don't want to wait for another year for a big project to start experiencing the potential value. So early trust, small successes, and credibility matter more in early stages, I think, than technical sophistication or so. But I'm looking at the two.
I think it's the same. If you can look at other projects, not necessarily AI projects, but software projects as well, you want to have early successes, early things to show. That it doesn't become bogged down in like a swamp of where a pit where money is thrown into and business does not know, or the decision makers, stakeholders don't say, okay, where is all this money going, and we're not seeing the results or the successes from this. I think that's really important that you have those early successes that you can show and that people can become very enthusiastic about your use cases.
But still you want to choose an early success where you can build upon for longer term as well. So how do you find that early success?
I think that just to add upon the story, like you kind of said, like you want to have some parameters from a people and organizational point of view to have a triage of like, okay, we want to start with this. I think if you just add feasibility from a technical point of view, you kind of get your low-hanging fruit point of view. And could be that it's not the most valuable case at the start, but it's feasible. And this combination, the weights that you attach to it, will be maybe your first, from all those process people and technology point of view, be the first thing you have to go for. But again, to be able to create this, you still have to build some of the foundational blocks that you probably can reuse for all the other or later flows that you're going to create or hyperautomate or whatever. But you will have to add upon different capabilities because those become more and more complex. But you know that you have some foundational steps that you have to create in the beginning, also for the low-hanging fruit cases. So I think in this kind of decision gate, it can really help you to get started. And often that's kind of the painful thing, just getting started somewhere.
Yeah, and it gives you also some insights, I think, of which projects can you start, how does it benefit our business strategy, etc. But also it gives you an insight in what you should not accelerate or maybe stop. And I think that's also a very useful insight for many organizations to take a look at it from the 3-lens perspective.
Yeah.
You mean business people and technology?
Yeah, business people and technology.
It also makes it very tangible. If you're talking about cases at that point in time and you're saying like, okay, we would do this from a people point of view because it's really solving a pain. You're looking at from an organizational point of view, it's not only solving a personal pain, but also a pain for the organization. It fits strategy. And from a technical point of view, it's feasible. You have some very concrete idea also from leadership or people are a bit further from this domain of AI, for example, and an idea of, I know why I should start with it. I know why I shouldn't start with some things, but it doesn't mean that I can't be able to automate or hyperautomate these steps down the line when we've been building those capabilities and learned along the way. But I maybe interrupted you.
No, not at all.
Awesome. I didn't want to.
I like that.
Did you want to add something, Thibaut?
No, I'm just looking at, if you talk about feasibility, I'm just thinking about what is then the feasibility that you want to look at.
A lot. I think.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to share when I talked about feasibility is that in this day and age with AI, the real big difference with the data and the digital kind of tools that we had in our tool chain is that there is some probabilistic character to it. And that means that although we see AI solving a lot of crazy problems these days, every day on LinkedIn or whatever, it's still not a given that it will work. And you want to experiment whether it works. And you're going to create or do some investments. So you want to know like, okay, how far can I go in proving the value and the feasibility in just experimenting, doing a proof of concept, whatever, to really say this is feasible enough. We did enough experimentation. Now we want to see, let's put it in the hands of people and see whether they really like to use it and what we have to. That feasibility study is a bit different compared to what we had to do in maybe 20 years ago when we just created a front end, for example, and then automating some other digital steps, whatever.
I think you raised something interesting here, Jan, but you're very much on which makes sense to some extent in your what you're talking about on the AI side of things.
Yeah, true.
If I take maybe the more Thibaut data angle, feasibility can also be, do we have the access? Do we have the data?
True.
Do we first need to maybe scrape the entire internet or pieces of the internet to be able to have the data? Do we want to buy a database to actually be able to have the data? Maybe you have something else to add, Thibaut.
Is the data ready? That's the big question. And that is the data there? Is it there? But is it good? Is the data good? Can we talk, or is the data that we get, is it good enough? Are those applications integratable, like you say? Can we talk with those applications that we want?
One thing it's funny, and it's not really new, but Gartner coined like the new term, and was like AI readiness of your data, right? Yeah. And it could then what does data readiness really mean in then AI solutioning, etc. And that's also something where you also see if you want to create, for example, the typical RAG kind of solutions, etc. You're going to ask questions or retrieve information in documents, and want to ask questions on those documents, etc. It depends on, is the information and the knowledge even there in the first place? And what can we expect from which data points, etc., given the queries that you will have to face in the end? And I think that's kind of aligned in what you also said, like define what data ready means for your AI solution
Yeah.
is also a crucial step in the feasibility study. So 100%.
But at the same time, also the data needs to be accessible. It's not because the data is ready that you can have access to it. It might be IP controlled. It might be behind some sort of
Also true.
third-party system. That's what I was more alluding to.
Extra security layers
Also
maybe need to be applied.
No, that makes sense. Maybe one final thing about that aspect from value creation and things to consider. Do you feel, or maybe the question for everybody, do you feel that you always need to use AI to be able to hyperautomate something? Does AI always necessary?
No, everybody always calls it, it's AI, but yeah, I've also learned in this company that AI is just a global term for something very more automation, document processing, everything around it.
You can use AI in those processes, but it's not necessary always.
Okay. Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. But I have the impression that nowadays, unfortunately, it needs to have the tag AI instead of just being able to automate something and actually be able to, as an organization.
Every app is thinking these days. That's the idea. Yeah.
There's a next big term. Like 10 years ago, it was big data. Everything was big data. Everyone wanted to work with big data, I guess. And now it's AI.
It doesn't take away to what Lisbeth earlier said. There is an opportunity right now to actually leverage the new technologies, but also a way to actually rethink where you were or as an organization where you want to go. And from that perspective, if you want to talk a little bit about more the backbone of how do you as an organization make it easier to actually get into enabling your organization to become more hyper-automation efficient and effective. There's two things that you typically actually we talk about with organizations: a digital and AI strategy, driving your business strategy into a digital AI strategy, and at the same time also looking at an AI operating model that enables you as an organization to do governance on those aspects. From that perspective, maybe Gert-Jan, can you talk a little bit about how you would look at it at the digital AI strategy in practice? What's the typical daily guidance there, or prioritization on decisions and so on and so forth from the strategy perspective?
Maybe start from the start. And I always liked what a colleague of ours shares about strategy is Chris. And he says, like, strategy is a capability on its own. And you define kind of which capabilities you also need in strategy as a capability. In a way, a meta capability. Bam!
It's very meta.
Now you got the consultant out of me in this podcast. However, I think the baseline, and again, there's so much more to it, but that in a strategy, you kind of give a sense of direction, your objectives, what you want to achieve. And you also define kind of the playing field, how you're going to achieve it, how you can achieve it. And I think a strategy, you want to step away. Often it's a PowerPoint, we all know, but when becomes it a useful PowerPoint is if it guides you in making decisions along the way. Because we started this podcast, or in one of the things that I said was, it's maybe not that super clear what your objective is in the first place. You have some vague idea we want to achieve, for example, more efficiency or more customer success or whatever. And then you have to think through, like, and what does that mean in my day-to-day? What do I really have to do? And what are those use cases, etc. But then that how you're going to walk down the line, creating your own AI journey path or whatever, and you will have some hurdles down that line. And you will have to take some actions. People need to be able to take actions, not only leadership, but also on the floor. And I guess that a strategy is very useful in that it should have to be able to change. That's the capability aspect to it. But it also has to be understood by everyone on that journey, from operation to tactical to strategy. And really, in the first place, to guide decision-making, given the playing field that you...
So it's a little bit of a guiding compass.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a guiding concept. What changes when you treat hyperautomation like this? It's not just a project, because when a project you are optimizing locally, but when you treat it like an operating principle or a strategy that's widespread in your organization, you start optimizing the system. So I think that management have to invest in order to transform the whole system. So, for example, prioritize value streams instead of tasks, invest in reusable building blocks, and making ownership and governance explicit upfront.
Yeah, makes sense. Not really much to add, but
especially from an operating model perspective, because we have our own operating model at IE that we see for AI. From my perspective, when I'm looking at an operating model, when we are instilling that at an organization, what we typically see is what you just named. That operating model is kind of a governance tool, if you will, to make sure these things happen, or at least are structured in a way that there's a way to actually have that compass be effective. See it as a map that actually helps the compass find the magnetism of Earth, if you will.
Yeah, I think in that compass, for people who are really interested, probably now it will be available somewhere on the AE website. But what you will see in the middle, that what maybe makes this operating model for in the day and age of AI maybe a bit different, given the operating models in the digital sphere 20 days ago, is that there's a very big emphasis also on the innovation process of it all. And I think you're less in a world now that you can think couple of months up front and think like this. These are the projects that we're going to do, and this is probably what we can achieve in those projects, etc. We need these type of people. It's more of a experimentation flow as well, where you want to get your hands on that feasibility, etc. Get the input from people, the trust from people very early on, but also allow a lot of space from cultural point of view, what we sometimes call the bottom-up point of view, to people to really experiment of like, what do I need and in my new role, in my new job, etc. How can I reinvent that role maybe as well? So that innovation process is kind of key, in my opinion, in that operating model that we shared.
And I wanted to actually, this is good stuff. I wanted to actually still talk about two things. One is about we have implemented some intelligent workflow and end-to-end workflow. It's hyper-automated. What now? It's running. How do we make sure it keeps on running and like actually also continuous improvement-wise that it keeps moving along? At the same time, something actually you spoke about the human side of things. You need people's role will or very likely changes, or at least their daily task changes, hopefully for the better. Let's go at least, but maybe we can take that one first.
Because I think that's a very important point, because what you see now is people choose different sides. Either way, they love AI and hyperautomation, or they're scared of it. And you have a lot of resistance within the company. But people don't resist automation because of the technology. They resist it because they feel decisions are made about them without them. And for transparency, I think that leaders should be very open early on about the ambition, but not the solution. And that's your bottom-up exercise that you were telling about. So you have to explain what problem you're trying to solve, what will change, and what is still undecided. But when people understand the why and they feel there is room for themselves to shape the how, AI no longer feels like a hidden agenda or like a threat for them. So I think, it's key that you involve people in redesigning their own work. Instead of telling people or teams what automation will replace, just invite them to a session where they can identify themselves where work is frustrating, repetitive, or where they want to focus their time on instead. Maybe they would like to have some more time for real customer interaction. So that shift from something being done to them to something being built with them is where you really, where trust really starts, I think.
It's interesting you bring that up, but at the same time, there's the potential other side of the coin where it could very well be that the job they really like doing gets automated away. And that's, I don't want to be the negative Nancy in the room here, but that could also be a reality to deal with, for sure.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And that's why you take those people probably in your transformation process when you do something like implementing or looking at an AI strategy at companies. That's why you take those people with you as well.
Yeah, indeed.
And you need them. It's not only from the change point of view to have them adopt whatever you're doing, but you also need them because you need the domain expertise from whatever you're automating to automate it properly, right? What we often see there indeed working quite well is working with kind of your ambassador level, where you have let's say a model group of people really open to the change already a bit, and they can really test, give feedback, and that's, I think, where you also mentioned the quick trust building, because if those early ambassadors are really ambassadors, they can create trust down the line as well. But indeed, to your point, if you're going to, in your kind of AI journey, going to maybe automate things away that weren't the boring nor the painful stuff, I think as well, to Lisbeth's point, is just be honest upfront about it. Kind of, you are a business and you have to stay a business also in this new age.
Yes, yeah.
And maybe you have to give some things up. Yeah. And people are mature, I would say, but it can also unleash maybe different things that they also would like to do in a new role that is going to be shaped. But I think it's difficult nowadays for everyone to see, but what would that new role then look like? I won't be the same AI architect or consultant from now in 5 years. And that is a bit scary maybe, but let's see what it will bring. And maybe it's a way more interesting job within 5 years than compared to now.
Exactly. I think you should really treat change and adoption as a scaling mechanism and not as an afterthought, what we see very often in many companies.
Okay. Amen.
Let's maybe jump to the final topic I wanted to talk a little bit about. Is like, okay, we have some stuff hyper automated, it's running. How do we make sure it keeps running? Like from a orchestration perspective or data perspective, there's new data being generated. How do you make sure that data makes sense, or that it doesn't make the model drift, or things go haywire? Any experiences you can share there, Thibault?
You need to use that data that you generate or to monitor, to retrain the model. And observability is key, I would say. You use the data, you use your observations, everything, monitoring, logging, tracing, and you try to monitor if something goes wrong, if the model goes adrift somewhere. I think that's really key to go further from there. To scale as well, I think great data foundation is necessary. It depends on where you are in your journey. If you want to do something pragmatic, or if you want to go top down, if you say, but a data foundation with a maybe platform integration layer where you have your data with a clear ownership in the data products which you expose, and then you can build on that foundation if you want to scale as well. So I think that's really important for when you go live or if you want to scale.
And how do we make sure that for instance, if you think about agent scenarios, agents start to answer questions more automatically, questions of customers might deviate, so things might need to change. How do we make sure that an existing implemented use case stays on top? We spoke about data products. Do we need to think about hyperautomation products or something like that? Or value streams? Do we need to continuously look at the value stream and try to rethink the process? Or because nowadays, like what you mentioned earlier, Lisbeth, many organizations don't necessarily rethink processes. They kind of accept the reality. But when you have hyperautomated something, in the end, you might end up in a scenario where you just become to some extent lazy again. How do we avoid that from happening? How do we look at that?
Avoid becoming lazy again.
Yes, well, because you already have become potentially even lazy from it being hyper-automated to some extent.
I don't know. I think two things you said also in the beginning, like how can we see whether progress is progress? I think when you want to have things, again, having the same quality as before and keeping the quality as is in your operational,
or even improve.
or improve is, I think your starting point is you will see whether the value that you're creating is dropping in your reports, for example, that you have created early on, or the accuracy of whatever agents or LLM calls or whatever.
Yeah, so the fact that you're starting from a clear ROI dashboard with certain metrics or KPIs you monitor, they will help you actually be guiding.
Yeah, because there do we even care whether something or someone is lazy as long as you're reaching your objectives, right? Because if people are getting lazy in the process.
I'm not necessarily talking about the people getting lazy. I'm just talking about the organization becoming complacent. Maybe is a better word for it.
Okay.
But that's reality now.
That's a continuous improvement mindset that you should acquire and should enable.
But do those processes still stay relevant if you become complacent? Is the ROI still present after X amount of years after automating, or do you see that going in the wrong direction when organizations go lazy?
Yeah, because isn't it so that just the benchmark is now just a bit higher? So everyone has to try because this new technology is available. You have a lot of new companies that can pop up. And because you can do it with less people and maybe more quality, the bigger companies these days have to really redesign, rethink themselves, reinvent maybe themselves a bit to that extent that they have to see, like, we just have to reach a baseline even. And if we're at the baseline of the quality and the speed of the services and the products that we deliver, that maybe other smaller companies can also reach as well with less of the resources that we have, then what do we have to do, even on top of this new baseline, to create even more that we are not outcompeted in the market? And I think a lot of companies are still in this phase of like reaching the benchmark or trying to get themselves in place that they are not even on that benchmark put out of the markets before thinking of new opportunities.
So that's a problem for next year then.
Who knows? So that's from my point of view. But again, maybe some Belgian companies are doing awesome stuff already.
For sure. No, okay, great. Well, maybe one final question to wrap up this episode or podcast. What's the one thing you must get right to actually move from pilots to sustain impact? And we spoke a little bit about pilots and experiments and trying to make things sustainable. If you would have to pick one thing, what would you pick? I don't know who want to go first, but
go ahead. Ladies first often.
Well, I think I already mentioned this. For me, what's important is that you make sure that you have your people also with you on this track. So I will repeat it once again. You should treat change and adoption really as a scaling mechanism and not as an afterthought. That is really my key takeaway that I would like to give to the audience today.
Sounds good. And I suppose you go to Thibaut, we just you can finish them.
Perfect.
Save the best for last.
Who knows? Pressure.
I would say, like I mentioned, data foundations, but I'm
biased.
Biased, yes, of course. But mostly I want to elaborate because you said choose one thing, and data foundations is just one short thing, but data foundations entails some things. You don't have to. Maybe it sounds too massive if I explain it. Like, you need data quality. You need some sort of platform where your data is kept and is integratable with your systems, and the AI agent can find it. It maybe sounds massive, but you don't have to start big. You can start small and then scale as it goes. So, but that's really important. AI is only as good as the data that's underneath. So, that's my takeaway for this podcast.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe then I can build a bridge between both of them.
For sure.
And I think the thing that AI does 25 years, building bridge between then process, technology, and people in every step that you do, whether it's AI, data, digital transformations, it really doesn't matter. But I think having those three built upon and interact with each other is key. from our, but also my point of view.
So to maybe then wrap things up, I think we can also, and we spoke about it as the last topic, hyperautomation is not necessarily an end state. It's not something that you try to achieve. You will want, of course, get better in it and grow, but at the same time, it's not necessarily the end state or an add-on. It's just something that you designed for to be able to then get value from it, be able to have it scale, and also change your organization. I think that's it for the parting words. I'd like to thank Gert-Jan, Thibaut, Lisbeth for joining me today, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for hosting,
Thank you.
Lode.
Thank you, Lode.
You're welcome.
Thanks.